Hey, Disney fans, planners, and reluctant visitors. I'm Becky, and this is Touring Plans Teaches. This week, we're shifting our gaze from the East Coast over to the West Coast, and we've got Genie 102 Disneyland differences. That's because, as complicated as Genie is over in Orlando, there are some different rules and ways you'll want to use Genie if you visit Disneyland in California. So this week, we're going to go over all of those differences that might throw off your groove. Let's start off by talking about what's the same, so we don't have to worry about the differences. First, just like in Orlando, at Disneyland, you can't use Genie to re-ride the same attraction multiple times. So if you get a reservation for Grizzly River Run in the morning, you can't get another one in the afternoon. It's one and done. Second, you can only purchase 2 individual lightning lanes per day. So just like at Walt Disney World, there are those separate individual lightning lane attractions, and we'll talk about which ones those are later. But you can only purchase 2 of them each day. That's the limit. Also, just like at Disney World, you can hold more than one Genie Plus reservation at a time, so you don't have to use it before you get your next one. And your return times can overlap with each other. So once again, you're able to stack those reservations if that's something that you want to do. Park hopping is also an option at Disneyland, and it's arguably easier than it is at Disney World. You can make those Genie Plus reservations for either park if you have park hopper tickets, and since the parks are right across the road from one another, you can go back and forth as often as you want. Finally, those free Genie plans that were pretty worthless in Orlando are just as worthless at Disneyland. They're going to send you to the things you probably don't want to do. They're just going to try to keep you away from the popular attractions with the crowds as much as possible. Purchasing Genie Plus is where things start to get a little bit different. Unlike Disney World, where you're paying $15 per day per person, and some sneaky tax in order to use Genie Plus, at Disneyland, it's a little more expensive. You have to pay $20 per person per day, but no tax on top of that, so I guess that's a nice little perk. If you're familiar with Max Pass, it's the exact same price, so that should feel pretty familiar. Like at Disney World, if you want to buy Genie Plus for the entirety of your vacation and use it every day, you can do that before you travel. You just add it to your tickets. But if you only want to purchase it for specific days of your vacation, you can't get up early and do that at 7 a.m. or midnight the night before like you can at Disney World. You can only do it once you tap into a park. So you have to be physically in Disneyland or California Adventure before you can buy Genie Plus for the day if you're doing it on a day-by-day basis. Before we get to booking attractions, let's talk about those little extras that come with your Genie Plus purchase. Unlike Disney World, you don't get augmented reality lenses for selfies or photos that you take in the parks. But for your $20, you do get unlimited PhotoPass downloads for the day. So this is much nicer than at Disney World, where you have to pay a bunch extra in order to unlock those. And like at Disney World, you get audio tales that you can listen to throughout the day. These are like miniature podcasts that tell you things about the parks or the history if you have some downtime and want to listen. Now let's talk about booking those Genie Plus attractions. Unlike at Disney World, where you have to set your alarm early for 7 a.m. to book that first one before everything sells out for the day, at Disneyland, you can't book any attractions until you've tapped into the park. So similar to purchasing, you can't purchase or book until you're physically inside that park. Now, if you leave again for the day, as long as you've tapped in, you can keep booking. But the idea is that you're supposed to be there. So this effectively eliminates any on-site advantage that users of Genie Plus or individual lightning lanes have. It doesn't matter if you're staying on site, everyone has to be physically in the park to be able to book their first reservation. There are also much fewer attractions that are eligible for Genie Plus at Disneyland and California Adventure than there are at Walt Disney World. Obviously, there are fewer parks. But there are even fewer attractions on Genie Plus than there were on Max Pass and Fast Pass before the parks shut down. That's because several attractions have been removed from those lists to make you pay more for individual lightning lane, and we'll talk about what those are. The good news is there's overall much, much less demand for Genie Plus on the West Coast than there is on the East Coast. A lot of that is because they're parks that are mostly visited by a lot of locals. Those locals aren't showing up first thing in the morning, so they're falling a little bit behind because they can't be stacking throughout the day without physically being in the park. And they don't feel the need to pay more to be able to skip lines because they can go as often as they want and avoid the crowds in other ways. It's even technically feasible to do all of the Genie Plus attractions at both parks in a single day if there's low crowds. So even though there's fewer options, you're still going to be saving a lot of time, and it's much easier to do because there's less demand than at Disney World where you're having to plan in advance because things are selling out. Much less selling out happening at Disneyland. Now let's talk about those individual Lightning Lane attractions. The West Coast parks have 3 of these total. In Disneyland, the only individual Lightning Lane attraction is Rise the Resistance. And in Disney's California Adventure, you can choose from Web Slingers or Radiator Springs Racers. Now there's an interesting note here. In Walt Disney World, none of the individual Lightning Lane attractions have single rider lines. But in California Adventure, both individual Lightning Lane attractions have single rider lines. So if you're looking to avoid spending that extra money and you're willing to split up your party, it's really a great option because often the single rider time is less than even the Lightning Lane wait time. So keep that in mind when you're visiting California Adventure. Just like the Genie Plus attractions, you can't book your individual Lightning Lane times until you enter the park. So you have to do that once you get into the park for the day. So you're going to be doing your Genie Plus and your individual Lightning Lane reservations about the same time once you tap in. It doesn't have to be when the park's open. If you tap in before the park opens, as long as you're tapped in, you can start making your reservations. Disneyland is also interesting because they tinker with those individual Lightning Lane prices a lot more. In Walt Disney World, we'll see some variation, but it's only the difference between weekdays and weekends. In Disneyland, the prices change somewhat erratically from day to day and can be really low and really high, and it's like they're doing a little bit of a study on us there. So I'm not even going to tell you what the prices for these are because they change so frequently that whatever I say is probably very different than what you'll end up paying. One other difference in these Lightning Lanes compared to Disney World is that at Disney World, your individual Lightning Lane return times are selectable by you. So anything that's available for the rest of the day, you can go in and choose a time that works for you. But at Disneyland, individual Lightning Lanes work the exact same as Genie Plus reservations. So you can only choose the next available return time. You can't pick something out later in the day. But again, just like Genie Plus, these individual Lightning Lane attractions rarely sell out very quickly, so you should have an opportunity to purchase them if you want to. Now you know all you need to know about how Genie Plus is different at Disneyland than it is at Disney World. Next week, on April 8th, we'll be going over the time savings at Disneyland that you can expect from Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lanes. So tune back in so that you know the best strategy to save the most time for your money. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.